Chapter 1. The Gilded Ambition, 1907 to 1911. The story of the Titanic is one of fierce corporate rivalry. At the start of the 20th century, the Atlantic Ocean was the world's most important highway. The Cunard Line had just launched the Lusitania and Mauretania, the fastest ships in the world. In response, J. Bruce Ismay, chairman of the White Star Line, and Lord Peary, partner at the Harland and Wolff shipyard, decided they wouldn't compete on speed. They would compete on size and opulence. In Belfast, Ireland, the infrastructure had to be rebuilt just to accommodate the Olympic-class ships. They built the gantry, a massive scaffolding system higher than any building in the city. For 3 years, 15,000 Irish laborers worked from dawn to dusk. It was a brutal environment. 8 people died during construction alone. On May 31st, 1911, the hull of the Titanic was launched into the River Lagan, greased by 22 tons of soap and tallow. Chapter 2. A masterpiece of engineering. The Titanic was a technological marvel. She was powered by 2 massive reciprocating engines and a low-pressure Parsons turbine which drove 3 bronze propellers. The center propeller alone weighed 22 tons. To feed this beast, the ship had 29 boilers and 159 furnaces, consuming 600 tons of coal every single day. Her safety features were the talk of the industry. The hull was divided into 16 watertight compartments, with doors that could be closed remotely from the bridge with the flick of a magnetic switch. The press famously dubbed her practically unsinkable. This phrase, meant as a technical description of her buoyancy, would eventually become a symbol of human arrogance. Chapter 3. The Social Hierarchy of the Sea. The Titanic was a microcosm of the rigid Edwardian class system. First class. These were the titans of industry. Passengers like John Jacob Astor IV, the richest man in the world at the time, Isidor Straus, owner of Macy's, and the unsinkable Margaret Molly Brown. They enjoyed a veranda cafe, a heated swimming pool, and a gym with a mechanical camel. Second class. Professionals, teachers, and clergy. Their accommodations were often better than first-class rooms on smaller ships. Third class. Steerage. Mostly immigrants from Scandinavia, Ireland, and Lebanon. They were searching for a new life in America. While they were at the bottom of the ship, they had clean beds and fresh food, luxuries many had never experienced. Chapter 4. The Departure, April 10th, 1912. The Titanic's journey began in Southampton. As she pulled away from the dock, the sheer displacement of her hull created a suction so powerful that it snapped the mooring ropes of the SS City of New York. The 2 ships nearly collided, coming within 4 feet of each other. Some took this as a dark omen. After picking up more passengers in Cherbourg, France, and Queenstown, Ireland, the Titanic turned her bow toward New York. On board were 2,224 people. The weather was unusually fine, and the Atlantic was like a mill pond. Captain Edward J. Smith, a man so beloved by the elite he was known as the millionaire's captain, was looking forward to a quiet final voyage before retirement. Chapter 5. Warnings in the dark. The first 4 days of the voyage were uneventful, but by Sunday, April 14th, the wireless room was buzzing. 6 different ships, including the Caronia, the Baltic, and the Mesaba, sent warnings about massive ice fields directly in the Titanic's path. The most critical warning came at 11 p.m. from the SS Californian, which had stopped for the night because it was surrounded by ice. But the Titanic's lead wireless operator, Jack Phillips, was exhausted. He had been repairing the radio equipment for hours and was busy sending passenger telegrams. When the Californian interrupted him, he snapped back, "Shut up! I am busy. I am working Cape Race." The Californian operator turned off his radio and went to bed. The Titanic was now alone. Chapter 6. The Fatal Encounter. 11:40 p.m. The night was moonless and freezing. Because the water was so calm, there was no white foam breaking against the base of icebergs, making them nearly invisible. To make matters worse, the lookouts in the Crow's Nest, Frederick Fleet, and Reginald Lee did not have binoculars. They had been misplaced in Southampton. At 11:40 p.m., Fleet saw a dark mass. He rang the bell 3 times and shouted into the phone, "Iceberg right ahead." First Officer Murdoch reacted instantly, ordering the ship to turn and the engines to reverse. But the Titanic was too large and moving too fast. Instead of a head-on crash, which she likely would have survived, the iceberg scraped her side for 300 feet, popping rivets and slicing a series of narrow gashes below the waterline. Chapter 7. The Math of Death. Initially, the impact was so slight that most passengers didn't even wake up. Some in first class even played soccer with the chunks of ice that had fallen onto the deck. But on the lower decks, the situation was grim. Mail clerks were already sloshing through knee-deep water. Captain Smith summoned the ship's architect, Thomas Andrews. After a quick inspection, Andrews delivered the devastating news. The iceberg had breached 5 of the first 6 compartments. The Titanic could stay afloat with 4 flooded, but 5 was impossible. The weight of the water in the bow would pull the ship down, causing water to spill over the top of the watertight bulkheads into the next compartment. Andrews estimated they had 2 hours, maybe less. Chapter 8. Women and Children First. At 12:05 a.m., the lifeboats were uncovered. There were only 20 boats, enough for 1,178 people. There were over 2,200 on board. The math was simple. Over 1,000 people were guaranteed to stay with the ship. The evacuation was chaotic. Because the crew hadn't held a lifeboat drill, many didn't know how to load them. The first boat, with a capacity of 65, lowered with only 28 people. In first class, some women refused to leave their husbands. Edith Strauss famously stepped back from a lifeboat, saying to her husband Isidore, "As we have lived together, so we shall die together." Meanwhile, in third class, many passengers were trapped behind locked gates, confused and unable to find their way through the maze of the ship. Chapter 9. The Final Moments. 2:10 a.m. to 2:20 a.m. By 2 a.m., the bow was completely submerged, and the stern was rising out of the water, exposing the massive propellers. The band, led by Wallace Hartley, played on the deck until the very end, allegedly finishing with a hymn, "Nearer, my God, to Thee." At 2:17 a.m., the Titanic's lights flickered one last time and went out. The stress on the midsection became unbearable. With a roar like thunder, the Titanic snapped in two between the third and fourth funnels. The bow plunged straight down. The stern settled back for a moment, then filled with water, stood vertically, and slid into the abyss. Of the 1,500 people left in the water, most died of hypothermia within minutes. The lifeboats, mostly half empty, were too afraid of being swamped by the drowning to return, except for Officer Lowe, who transferred passengers and went back to save only 4 more people. Chapter 10. A Legend Beneath the Waves. The rescue ship Carpathia arrived 2 hours later, finding a sea of white life jackets and empty deck chairs. The disaster changed the world forever. It led to the creation of the International Ice Patrol and new laws requiring lifeboats for every soul on board. For 73 years, the Titanic lay hidden. In 1985, Robert Ballard found her 12,500 feet down. The bow sits upright, ghostly and elegant, while the stern is a mangled field of debris. Today, the Titanic is slowly being eaten by Halomonas titanicae, a bacteria that consumes the iron. Within decades, the ship will collapse into a rust stain on the ocean floor, leaving behind only the stories of the people who sailed on her.